Resident Evil video games, but this one has turned me right back on. And one of the biggest reasons why is because the director of Resident Evil is back with this one, and it isn't a Resident Evil game. If this were a Resident Evil game under a different name, I wouldn't really be as struck on playing this game as one I am right now. But because it's from the original director of Resident Evil, and it's not a Resident Evil feel game with a different gameplay, a different kind of story, a different kind of role-play feel, different graphics, different atmosphere, I am really for this video game because I wanted a game like this. I wanted a game that would scare the ever-lying shit out of me, and I got it with The Evil Within. And a lot of people ask me, what are my opinion on some of these recent video games that have been dropping for consoles like PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. You really have to be in out of some of these games. Just don't take the game for the promotion. Just don't say the game is awesome because of the promotion. You really have to watch your walkthroughs on YouTube. You really have to read your video game summaries on sites like IGN and, of course, Cheap Planet. You have to go out of these websites and read them. And you can also go to the official developers' websites of these video games to get more info on the video game because, surprisingly, they do give you a lot of info. I wanted a game that would scare the ever-living shit out of me, and I got it with Resident Evil, and I'm going to be getting it with The Evil Within. In terms of a 5-star scale perspective rating, you can easily rate this video game 4 to 5, taking 1 star out because there are some things about the game that you will not like. You're going to find the gameplay is very difficult first starting off. The control concept is very difficult. I found that very challenging, reading through some of the controls of the video game without even having played the video game. I found the control concept to be very challenging just by reading the summary of the controls of the game, because that's one thing that I look for is how easy the control concept of the game is and just how easy the video game is in terms of gameplay, and neither comes through with The Evil Within. They are all challenging aspects of the game, so that is challenging for an advanced gamer out there. And I will say this about The Evil Within. It looks like a video game that is for the advanced video gamer. It's not for somebody who likes to play racing video games or NFL video games or NHL video games or a Disney video game. This is a fucking video game for an advanced fucking gamer. You really have to know what you're doing playing this game. So I wouldn't recommend it for someone who isn't an advanced video game player. Take it from somebody who's been playing video games for the better part of the last 20 years. That's 2 decades, putting it into perspective for you. You really have to be an advanced video gamer. And even the advanced video gamers will find themselves dying significantly in this game because just the technology that goes into the development of the villains in this game is amazing. Just how smart these villains are, just how detailed the villains are, and just how difficult the gameplay is will force you to literally die. They will force you to choke on this video game and throw the controller down and give it up for maybe 2 to 3 hours to a time. This is a game that you really have to have a lot of patience with, and this is a game that you really have to know what you're fucking doing, because if you don't know what you're doing with this fucking video game, you're going to be very fucking frustrated very early in this game and find yourself saying, holy shit, a lot through the game, and you'll probably be saying holy shit more than you expected within the first chapter of the game. I remember one walkthrough that I saw of this game on YouTube, just to give you an idea here, and to put it into perspective for you. The guy who was playing the game and doing the walkthrough on YouTube, I don't know what console he was playing it for. I would assume a PlayStation 3 or a PlayStation 4, because I think he was comparing the graphics from PS3 and PS4, but he wasn't even through the first chapter, and the point of this is that he was terrified, and he was freaking the fuck out in his own words, putting freaking the fuck out in quotations. That's how freaky this video game is. And if you're wondering if I was interested in The Evil Within after watching several walkthroughs, I was even more interested in this video game than I originally was. I had to have been originally interested in the game to check out the walkthroughs on YouTube, but I am even more intrigued with this video game now because of just how different it is from the original Resident Evil games, because it's from the original Resident Evil director, it's from a different developer, and because of these walkthroughs with how terrified people are playing them, which is actually really funny. I won't be as humored by it when I actually play the video game and get a chance to go through the entire game for the first time ever, but with how humored I was watching the walkthroughs of how terrified people were freaking the fuck out, I am even more excited to play this video game because I was always a fan of these horror movies. Not when I was a younger kid, but once I got in my mid-teens, I became a huge fan of these horror movies, like from Freddy Krueger to Jason Voorhees to Michael Myers. And, I wanted a game that was kind of like those, and we finally are getting it now with The Evil Within. Now, there are video game players out there that will prefer video games like Destiny, Call of Duty, whatever the case may be, but this is a game that you really have to play. Call of Duty players, Final Fantasy players, you have to give this game the benefit of the doubt. How can you not give this game the benefit of the doubt with how many ratings the game has gotten in the high ranks, with how many positive reviews this game has gotten, being one of the more terrifying games that a lot of advanced gamers have played in years. This game has been getting pretty good reviews from what I've been reading on websites like IGN.com. So you kind of got to go ahead and give it the benefit of the doubt. At the end of the day, how can you not give this video game the benefit of the doubt? I thought about not reviewing this game, but after reading the summaries and reading the ratings and reading the reviews that people were giving it a few weeks after it dropped and playing it through in completion, 4 to 5 days total it will take you, I said to myself, this is a game worth reviewing because of just how fun the game seems to play and just how exciting the game is and just how emotional you'll get playing it, because there are those emotional video game players out there who get very intense playing the game. And the number of people who actually got intense playing the game, watching the walkthroughs, was amazing too, because we've all had our moments playing a game, whatever the game may be, whatever genre the game comes from. We've all had our moments where we get frustrated and very intensified by the gameplay and coming so close to accomplishing an objective with the video game, but never getting it done. We throw the remote down, we give it up, we go about our day, we go back to playing it a couple of hours after giving a break from it, and then we finally beat the objective. You'll find yourself getting very frustrated with it, like we have all gotten over the years. I mean, we've all had our video game moments. We've gotten frustrated. It could be with GTA. It could be with something in Crash Bandicoot. It could be with the simplest Super Mario video game. But we've always had our moments where we've gotten very intensified and very emotional with the video game, and you'll find yourself being caught up within more than one moment of this video game where you'll be very emotional. And I don't blame you with how complex the controls are, with how detailed the game is, and just how emotional the game's story is. As I mentioned, you play as a group of detectives, and you're investigating a paranormal encounter with several different areas examined. And the thing is, too, about this game is it's not really a game where you have to follow the map. That's a huge plus because, games like Batman require you to follow a map, which is very complex, like a lot of games do. I know the Call of Duty video games require you to follow a map, which is very complex. But we don't really have a complex map to have to follow. It's pretty much straightforward. This game is. All you have to do is pay attention to your surroundings. So the map and the complexity of the map can be taken out of it. So it's not, that hard in terms of complexity of the map. All you really have to do is pay attention to your surroundings, read the text that comes up on the screen, and just pay attention to things that are around, like bottles or knives, and use what the game gives you to survive. One technique that I've always learned to apply with video games, to apply to playing a video game, is the game always gives you something to survive. The game gives you what you need to survive. And if you actually take what the game gives you into consideration and use it to survive, you will survive. All you have to do is come up with a worthy strategy of beating each chapter and use what the game gives you to survive, because it wouldn't be there if the game didn't want you to survive. So the game gives you what you need to survive. All you have to do is be smart enough to fucking use it, because if you don't, you're not going to survive. As I said here earlier, what you have to do is you have to hide, you have to have a good strategy, and you have to be able to run in the game. You have to look for openings in the game. As hard as a level may seem with The Evil Within, all you have to do are look for the openings. Look for your chance in the game, and you will survive. Now, the game doesn't give you very many chances, just to give you a heads up here, but it does give you enough chances. You may die 15, 20 times, and the game may take pity on you, and you'll get an opening early on as opposed to earlier in the game when you were waiting 10 or 15 minutes for that opening to be presented to you. But the game does eventually take pity on you, and it is a defeatable game. That is the good thing about this video game. The Resident Evil games weren't as defeatable because the game really seemed unstoppable in terms of mayhem and just how out of control the game will get, because the Resident Evil games, especially on PlayStation 3, got really intense by Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. And a lot of people gave up on the Capcom developers because the game was really intense. The Resident Evil games were challenging, and Capcom just kept putting out harder games after Resident Evil because that's what they prided themselves on. So Capcom is out. So that's an added bonus. Was I ever a fan of Capcom video games with the exception of the Resident Evil games? No, not really. I played Capcom for years on SNES. I played it on Sega Genesis. I played it for years. Was never really a big fan of Capcom. Capcom did develop some of my favorite titles, but I was never really a fan of them. And when they were taken over by other developers, I became a fan of them more than I was when they were being developed by Capcom. It's amazing, how a different developer can take over a video game and do what they do with it. But I never really was a fan of Capcom video games, with the exception of Resident Evil. And by Resident Evil, Operation Raccoon City was not as big of a fan. But this game, because it's not developed by Capcom, you need to give it a few extra points. If this was being developed by Capcom, I would be coming on here and bluntly saying to you, bluntly, openly admitting over this microphone, fucking don't buy this game, because Capcom are terrible with how difficult their games are, with how little detail they put in to their games, with the exception, as I said earlier, of Resident Evil, because the graphics are really where it's at with Resident Evil, with how little detail they put into their fucking games. Don't ever buy a fucking Capcom video game. I will kill you, literally, if you buy a Capcom video game. Now, if you're a diehard fan of the Capcom titles, by all means do it. If those are the only games you buy, like a lot of people only buy Rockstar games, I've had that conversation more than once with game players of Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption more than once. If you're a diehard fan of something like Rockstar or Capcom, buy those developer video game titles and buy those developer video game titles only. But you really got to give this game a chance and stay away from video game developers like Capcom, because they are never going to take pity on you, and they're never going to release a video game that is easy. The good thing about Rockstar is with how challenging Rockstar campaigns tend to be for Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption and Max Payne 3, which was an awesome title for the PlayStation 3, released back in 2012. Bought that in the first few days of its release in May of 2012. Was really excited to play that one. With how challenging Rockstar may be, at least they give you a